the Moneyweb Crypto Podcast, where we discuss all things crypto related. Your host, Kieran Ryan.
Digital fraud is costing South African banks more than 1 billion rand a year, and the figure appears to be growing. It's clear the bank's attempts to educate consumers are not having the desired effect. A report by Verizon shows that 74% of data breaches are through error, privilege misuse, use of stolen credentials, or social engineering. A well-reported case in South Africa, which has shaken the business community into action, involves business email compromise, or BEC. In 2023, the Johannesburg High Court ordered law firm ENS to pay a client 5.5 million rand plus interest and costs after funds intended for a property purchase were intercepted by a criminal syndicate. That decision was later overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal. The scammers impersonated the law firm and directed the client to pay the funds into their bank account. This is just one of thousands of such cases happening every year. Now, iTouch is a South African company that's come up with a solution that may make it far more difficult to pull off scams like this. The solution is called Mobile Virtual Identity, or MVI. Unlike the current SMS verification system, which is frequently breached by scammers, MVI uses encryption for mobile banking transactions and communications, even in cases where devices are cloned, and that seems to be happening a lot these days. Security of transactions is ensured by tokenizing and encrypting customers' device credentials using the same kind of cryptography that gave birth to blockchain technology. Well, to discuss this, we are joined by Wahid Adam, CEO of iTouch, to find out more about this and why the need for this kind of solution to fraud. Wahid, thanks very much for joining us on the Moneyweb Crypto Podcast. And if you will, just set the stage for us. What is the current state of digital fraud? How are people being scammed? What led you to develop this product?
Thank you, Kieran, and thank you to everyone listening for being here. iTouch has been in the enterprise communication space for a long time, right? So we've been around since the mid-90s, and SMS, for example, has always been utilized as a communication channel by, for example, the banking industry, and with the use of things like one-time passwords, authenticate transactions. And the channel, being ubiquitous as it is, has a global play in the sense that it works everywhere, right? Whether you're in the rural part of Africa or whether you're in New York, Manhattan, SMS works. So as a ubiquitous channel, and in more recent years, we're finding that fraudsters are now playing on the channel and intercepting communication in a way that the channel is no longer as trusted as it was. So with iTouch being in the space for a long time and seeing this play out as it has over the last years, we decided that it's time for us to kind of get into the space of securing the channel so that it continues to remain ubiquitous, trusted, and a channel that everyone has access to, and that therefore the banks can still use it. And in that regard, it's been a 9-year journey, Kieran, in order for us to get to where we are. It hasn't been a simple one. And, every time you think you have a solution, technology and advances, and then, of course, you got to go with it. But this time around, we believe we have something that is unique, it's patented, and it's something that we're really passionate about driving in terms of securing communication channels and, saving the public from losing the kind of money, including the enterprises like the banks, who, as you said, have lost over 1 billion rand in recent years in just 1 year. So the cost to the industry is huge.
Yeah, and I'm going to come back to that cost in a little bit. And also, does it have application in crypto? But before we get there, there are a lot of security products out there promising to solve digital fraud. What does Mobile Virtual Identity, or MVI as you call it, how is that different from these other products?
So when it comes to the banking industry, you'd always find that they try to make it frictionless for the consumer. They don't want to trouble the consumer in order to lift any heavy security solutions because they just feel the consumer shouldn't be troubled. So their major effort has been centered around education. So I'm sure you yourself would have received multiple levels of communication, whether it's from SMS or email or a letter in the post from your bank saying, do not fall victim to fraud based on these things, whatever that may look like. Currently, the technologies are around, internal to the bank. So they'll set up systems that kind of monitor transactions and what your habits are. So a bit of AI comes into that play. The others would be around facial recognition, which is kind of the modern thing today. So your device credential or capability in terms of facial recognition is now coupled to that of your account. And that is, I would say, in early stages of testing within our banks, but it is being used. The latest one I've seen, I must say I particularly got scared of it, was giving my bank permission to listen to my calls so that if I do receive a call that sounds suspicious, that they are able to drop that call. But that means they're listening to every one of my calls, and I'm not very comfortable with that. Regards facial recognition, fraudsters kind of get onto the bandwagon so fast that today you've probably seen, the concept of deep fakes and how they're now using facial recognition technology to their advantage. And a very big recent case was a company in Hong Kong where the CFO got onto a Zoom call with the CEO and got instruction from the CEO to make a payment, which was $25 million. This was a Zoom call, face-to-face, right, in terms of that. And the payment was made, but that was never the CEO. It was actually a deep fake of the CEO giving instruction to the CFO. So fraudsters really get smart. They're not people that, don't understand technology, and they certainly know how to kind of breach the technologies. So mobile virtual identity is kind of playing in a part of the process flow where lesser capabilities are able to differentiate because we take it offline. Now, let me explain what that means. So from a consumer perspective, they would download our APK file or a mobile app, and they would enroll for the service. So the enrollment is a very simple two-step process. They would simply put in their mobile number and then give their device permission to receive encrypted messaging. This then creates a secure inbox, so another inbox for your audio messaging that comes in, separate from your regular SMS inbox. And at the same time, when they're enrolling, we are then using or taking different elements, credentials, as we call it, of the mobile device, and we tokenize that and put it in the cloud. So that becomes the consumer's mobile virtual identity.
Explain this concept of tokenizing and how this is used in protecting transactions and communications. We understand tokenization as a digital representation of real-world value. Is this what you mean by tokenization of your identity?
Yes. So being a virtual identity means I'm not taking your picture, I'm not taking your passport, I'm not taking, your ID card, I'm not using those credentials and seeing you in person. So in this case, I create a virtual identity for you. And in that regard, it means I take certain credentials of your mobile device, such as your IMEI number, which is your device, your SIM card, your mobile number. And we then take those credentials as a package, tokenize it. In other words, we create a key and we place that in the cloud. Now, every time your bank communicates with you, as long as those credentials are intact, we believe that is you, right? So the intended recipient will be receiving the bank's communication. But if any of those device credentials amends or changes, we consider that not trusted, and we simply tell the consumer to contact the bank for support. Now, the fraudster is unlikely to call the bank for one, but it's in that fraudulent activity, that social engineering tactic, where those credentials do change. For example, when they intercept your messaging, they usually do that, for example, by a SIM swap. So that means for them to have done a SIM swap, they got a different device, they got a different SIM, but they got your number. Now, those credentials don't match my key. So they've intercepted you, right? They got your credentials from you either through smishing or vishing, and I can explain that in a bit. But once that credentials have changed, I know that. Therefore, I don't decrypt the encrypted message your bank is sending you. And in that regard, I'm just simply telling you to contact your bank for support. The fraudster is unlikely to do that, but if it is your case where, let's assume you did change your SIM or you did change your device, then you'll call your bank and they'll go through the usual process of authenticating you, right? As they would do now. And then the bank has the ability to re-enroll you once they know, all right, that is Kieran, we can now be comfortable that communication can once again be trusted.
Does this bypass this whole deep fake thing that we've been talking about earlier, which is pretty scary? I mean, there are some very convincing deep fakes out there. And as you say, you don't want to have your voice recorded and repackaged so that somebody else can use it. So I guess what it means is that facial recognition and voice recognition, given what AI has done to it, are not really secure.
Absolutely. And that's why we have not utilized that form of technology in our solution, right? So just to kind of maybe explain further. So I've explained how the consumer creates their own mobile virtual identity. On the enterprise side, or let's say your bank, for example, they will acquire the service. So they will purchase the service from us. And in that, they get their own token, their own key in our system. Now, the bank already has you as a consumer, as a customer. So when they communicate with you, they already got your MSISDN or your mobile number, and they send you, for example, an OTP. That is then flowing through to our system where it's sorted. And that will be basically where we will say, is this number enrolled with us or is it not? If it's not, then it will default as an SMS to you, like it does now. But if you are enrolled as a consumer with the system, it then encrypts the message. It then tags on what we call a sender ID, which in South Africa we don't kind of have. So you'll get a message from your bank with a long number, right? In this case, it will mention your bank's name. And then it comes into not your regular inbox, as I said, but in your secure inbox. And it's encrypted. Within milliseconds, we are now looking for the keys to match. So on the one side, it's the consumer's virtual identity that we're seeing. Is everything intact? Yes. On the other side, the bank's key now matches and the message is now decrypted and where you can now continue your transaction. And that all happens within milliseconds.
Sorry, what kind of encryption are you using?
So let me put it to you simply for the audience is that it would be bank-grade security, right? Our technology and code has been designed around bank-grade coding in the sense that our engineers actually come out of that industry. So, we're talking about FIPS compliant. We're talking about, so it's all the fancy terminology, ANSI, etc. So that is the kind of code we're using for encryption. So, as our engineers will say, there is nothing that can't be broken. But our level of encryption is such that it probably takes you 3 months, to kind of eventually decode that particular message. But by then the transaction is long over. Okay. So yes, it's that level of bank-grade security.
But tell us a bit about your background and how you got started in this field.
Oof, that's a long one, Kieran. So I would define myself as an entrepreneur and had multiple businesses along the way. But back in the early 2000s, I kind of by accident got involved with this particular industry. iTouch was at the time about 5 years old. And I ended up working with iTouch on a number of elements and in terms of what I was getting into as a technical partner. But then loved what they did. And eventually I got involved and launched iTouch in Nigeria back in 2004. And in 2009, it was sold alongside what we call the B2C side of iTouch, so business to consumer services. And we maintained the ownership of the business to business side of the business. And that was largely in, enterprise communication or enterprise customer communication, I should say. And so we've been serving the banks, we've been serving the large retailers in South Africa since the mid-90s, as I said, and have built a reputation based on our security levels, which which is why the banks deal with us. And in order to be a vendor to the banks, they put you through a lot of testing in terms of security. So pen testing our systems, the kind of security that is required by them to comply to the BOPI Act, for example, does mean that the onus is on them to also choose vendors who help them protect their data and are not another element of breach. So ITI's history is long in this. We serve multiple channels, so not only SMS, but all the other channels of communication like email, USSD platforms, and we got other communication platforms we built for some of the banks. So a lot of technology around communication.
I see the figures for bank fraud worldwide are not getting any better. I mean, you talked about 1 billion rand in South Africa. Internationally, it's $24 billion. That does go back a few years, and it has probably increased since then. So you're talking about a fairly large addressable market. What's been the response from, and I guess your clients, you mentioned you would be marketing this to the banks. What's the response been like?
It's been really positive. The sales cycle of any technology such as this with banks is not a short one. So, we got to fit into the life cycle of exercises they are implementing with regard security. But it's been really positive. We've not only had interest within the South African borders, but the African environment as well. And, you talked about fraud rising and increasing dramatically. Remember, as more people get online, right? So more people in Africa, for example, have access to smart devices, mobile banking apps, banks, for example. So, remain more banked than they are unbanked today. Then there's obviously more access for fraudsters. There's more people to defraud. So the African environment as well has been very, very excited about the technology and regards the trade bodies. So we've had a word with the SABRIC, the South African body that measures banking risk. And, I don't know if you know SABRIC, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, the banking risk. So they won. We've spoken to the Bank Association of South Africa, so they're aware of the technology. And MEF, the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, the global trade body, is also quite keen on becoming the secretariat for the product. So, it's not an African problem or not a South African problem. It's a global problem, as you said. So we're seeing quite a lot of excitement. I was just at a conference in Kenya last week, the ITW conference, and again, the people I chatted to there, were blown away. So we're very excited for the future.
Right. Okay. Now, it does sound like a solution that has been built on the blockchain. Perhaps that is the case. Perhaps it isn't. But maybe you can answer that question. But I wanted to follow up that and say, what is the application, if any, for trading and transacting in cryptocurrencies? Because there is a huge amount of fraud going on in that. Not necessarily something that you can solve, because a lot of this is done on social media. Somebody says, transfer me such and such, and I will invest it for you and make 10% a week for you. Well, there's not much you can do if you fall for that one. But for people who might be transacting to somebody that they shouldn't, is there any benefit here in this product?
All right. So let me say, firstly, it's not built on a blockchain, right? But the behavior of it is blockchain derived. So what we are doing in a way is securing a communication channel. Now, we spoke about SMS, for example, but what I've failed to mention is that it's not the only channel of communication we're protecting. We're also protecting the data channel. Now, what does that mean is that I can now send the bank message and terminate it over data rather than over the GSM network. And over data, well, for starters, the banks are going to love that because it saves them a lot of cost in terms of SMS communication. It's a lot cheaper. But second, and for the consumer, more advantageous is instead of getting an OTP, for example, where you type in the 5-digit number, you would simply press approve or decline. So it kind of behaves like a mobile banking app. Right? So it's a very smart feature. So when it comes to kind of the blockchain question is, can we protect cryptocurrencies? So let me say, Kieran, it's another phase of our development that will happen, but absolutely yes. And one of the major parts of it is people's crypto is sitting on exchanges, crypto exchanges. If an exchange gets hacked, and that has happened in the past, then your tokens or your cryptocurrency is at risk. So the big talk around the globe is that if you've got a lot of cryptocurrency, be sure to take it into a cold wallet or cold storage, as they call it. And that's essentially taking it off the exchange and putting it into your own little bank vault, right? So that bank vault is something you could lose. So it's dangerous in that regard if you don't take care of that bank vault of your own, but it's a way of securing your cryptocurrency. Our system, through its encryption program, could actually take your tokens off. So each token will come off through our encryption thing, end up in that same inbox I was telling you about in an encrypted way, but it's actually taking your token off the exchange, placing it on your device, encrypted, so even if your device was stolen, no one knows what to do with it. And you can then send that back to your exchange when you want to kind of reactivate your crypto and perhaps start trading. So it's a technology, what I'm just saying, will probably not make sense to a lot of people, but it's the next phase of our development. And yes, essentially, it will become a cold storage wallet.
Cold storage mean not connected to the internet.
Yeah, it's totally off.
Right. So if your device was stolen, let's say you did what you just suggested and you moved it in an encrypted format onto your device, your phone gets stolen. Do you have a recovery potential in your system where the person doesn't have his phone, of course can't remember, his passwords and all that thing? Could you recover his crypto for him?
I think it's a good question in the sense that what is the information that we hold of a customer? Right? Because, again, as a consumer, I don't want people to hold my information. And from a bank perspective, I certainly don't want anyone to be holding the information of the message I send the customer. Now, currently with SMS, the minute it goes to what we call an aggregator or a company like iTouch that's going to deliver that bank message, there's a footprint that is left behind of the actual message. Right? That's how it currently works. That's how the technology works. In our case, using the encryption platform, all I hold is an encrypted jargoned message. I hold nothing else. So that is a key point, Kieran, in the sense that the information the bank sends is no longer visible to an aggregator or anyone along the way that may intercept that message other than the consumer being intercepted. So that's very key. It doesn't only protect the consumer. So in the case of the crypto question, and bearing in mind we're still in, writing the technology, but in that regard, all I'll have is the jargon message. So when you re-enroll and your jargon message is sent back to you, that would be the key that you're talking about to re-enable your crypto again. But I wouldn't know that. I just have a jargon message.
Right. So rather like with your bank account password, you would have to have that written down somewhere or your seed phrase as is recommended for anybody transacting in cryptos. Normal protocols apply. Terrific, Wahid. Thanks very much for that. What an interesting development that you have. And I wish you the very best of luck on it, because I think there's applications here. This is clearly a problem that is going to get resonance in the market and I hope in the cryptocurrency world as well. So good luck with that.
Thank you, Kieran. We're very excited. I think the idea of, the consumer holding their own virtual identity, almost the terminology used is self-custody kind of thing or self-ownership. So I think in this regard, we've come to that where we're giving the consumer that power, but also where the communication they want to receive, i.e. their banking communication, for example, is encrypted, secured, and in a way that it takes two to tango in this case. The bank token's got to be existent, their token's got to be existent in order for communication to happen. So you cannot have an enterprise simply sending you a secure message without them being party to the actual entire solution. And in that regard, it becomes a safer space to communicate. And maybe just to mention, when you talk about a bank, because they're so nervous about the type of communication they send to you could be intercepted, They therefore don't send you all the communication you would need using that channel because they can't trust it. This opens the door for them to even use things like marketing messaging. They could send you a link next time to an application form if they wanted to, because it's encrypted. Some of the things they cannot do today. So it also broadens the kind of use case for the messaging channels, be it data or SMS. So we look forward to kind of securing this journey with the consumer and bank or enterprise, and then hopefully giving everybody the chance to receive communication through the ubiquitous channels we know today.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Wahid Adam, who is the CEO of iTouch.
Thank you, Kieran. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Moneyweb Crypto Podcast, hosted by Kieran Ryan. To listen to our other podcasts, go to moneyweb.co.za or the Moneyweb app and follow Moneyweb News for daily updates.